Good morning. Good morning, traders. How are you all doing today? Karibuni sana. Glad you could all join us this fine Thursday morning. Hope everyone is doing well today. So, for those who are new to these sessions, my name is Mitch Kaniero and I'm a trader with Afriforex. I want to welcome you to another Afriforex daily analysis session. Now, during these sessions, we as the Afriforex team analyze the markets, we identify what trading opportunities we're looking at taking for the day, and we do share that information with you. So remember, if you do have any questions, queries, feel free to ask them on the chat box. The team will be there to respond to you, but I will also be looking to address any and all questions on the chat box at the end of this session. So let's jump straight into it. So as usual, we'll start off with our watch list. Now, today, our watch list has changed. So if we quickly go there. So you can see yesterday, or at least even this whole week, our focus has been looking for buying opportunities on the Canadian dollar as well as the US dollar and mix and match them with all the other pairs on the sell side. However, today, both the US dollar and the Canadian dollar have moved to the sell side. So our focus today is only going to be on the Japanese yen. That's the only pair that's going to be on the buy side. And we're going to mix and match them with all the other pairs on the sell side. So since there is a number of pairs for review, so let's end up having a look at that before we look at a few screenshots that we did manage to get. Then we will focus on today's pairs. But before that, in terms of fundamentals, there's nothing much happening today. As you can clearly see, nothing much during the Asian session, nothing really happening during the London session. It seems most of the news is going to come in during the US session. And we do have some high impact news, some jobless claims, some GDP news. So we do end up expecting some good volatility during the US session. However, let's watch to see what ends up happening. So let's start off with the pairs for review. So we'll start off here with the Australian dollar against Canadian dollar. Now, yesterday, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that we are pointing out since the market had been coming to the downside. What we wanted was a pullback to come in close towards this particular area right here before we're able to look for selling opportunities. Unfortunately, that did not work out. As you can clearly see, the price was not able to get all the way to the top, but it's a similar situation as we keep on pointing out the timings at 3 o'clock during the US market open, or at 4:30, that's when you can clearly see the price really did come to the downside. Now, unfortunately, you can clearly see we did end up finding some sort of bias area right here where they did end up giving a lot of issues. Unfortunately, today, since the Canadian dollar fundamentals have switched, we will not be focusing on this kind of spreads. You can see the price is starting to come to the upside. So the next pair we did have was the Canadian dollar against Swiss franc, looking for buying opportunities on this kind of pair. It seems that this market started working just before the Frankfurt market opened. As you can clearly see, it did bounce off this particular area, coming to the upside. Although by the time the London market was opening, the price was already up here at the top. So there was no real buying opportunity. As you can clearly see, the market just kept on ranging, bouncing between these levels, not necessarily really going anywhere. It was later on during the US session that the price did actually start coming to the downside. That Canadian dollar weakness that we were, or at least what we are expecting to possibly see. Unfortunately for us today, this is a pair we're not going to be focusing on today. Now, the next pair we did have was a British pound against Canadian dollar. Now, in this kind of pair, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. Now, the sales really did work out, but the fact that we're within an area where the bias, it would have been quite tricky. As you can see, the game plan was for either waiting for a pullback to come back in or a breach to the downside and waiting for the pullback to come back in within the support and resistance area for us to look for selling opportunities. Unfortunately, the British pound pairs did show a lot of weakness yesterday, and they did end up just taking off once the Frankfurt market did open at 10 o'clock. And there were some fundamentals that John had pointed out yesterday. You can see after that, during the US session, there's nothing really much that ended up happening apart from a slight pullback that's coming in. But unfortunately, we cannot, or at least we will not be looking at any selling opportunities on this pair, unfortunately, today. So we'll focus on the next Canadian dollar pair we did have, which was the euro against Canadian dollar. Now, on this kind of pair, the pair kept on dragging to the downside. What we wanted was a pullback. Unfortunately, that was not the case. You can see during the Frankfurt market open, it continued coming to the downside. Seems like it had broken some sort of small support and resistance area here. And you can see once the price breached and kept on holding, you can see at around 3:30 or so, you can see the price attempted to come to the downside, still holding within this particular area. Although the main thing we did want was more of a pullback to come in. Even though the price continued coming to the downside, unfortunately, this is a pair that we're not going to be looking at today. Now, the next pair we did have was the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. Now, in this kind of pair, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities. And you can see the three areas that John had pointed out. Now, early in the morning, the price looked as if it was breaking this area to the upside. You can see John had mentioned that if you could get the price coming back in and holding below, could potentially look for selling opportunities. Now, the price came to the downside. Unfortunately, did not hold below at that point in time. But you can see during the US session, once the US market came in, that's when the big boys during that session were able to bring this price all the way down towards the buyer's area. You can see today the way the price is coming to the upside. Unfortunately, this is a pair that we're not going to be focusing on today. Now, the next pair we did have was the Australian dollar against the US dollar. Here, our bias was to look for selling opportunities. You can see the three areas that John had pointed out, but also mentioned that there was some sort of support and resistance area right here, where he had this blue support and resistance area. And you can clearly see, even based on the illustration, wanting to see what ended up happening within here, potentially seeing some sort of reaction. And you can see the price continued coming to the upside during the London session. And if you do note the timing, around 3 o'clock, that's when the US market did end up opening. And you can see the price did actually start coming to the downside. If you missed that trade, you can see later on, the price managed to come to the downside right here. You know, the pullback, the price was holding below that, did end up giving another selling opportunity. Unfortunately, today during the Asian session, you can see the price coming to the upside. And that's one of the reasons why this is a pair that we're not going to be focusing on today. Now, next pair we did have was the US dollar against Swiss franc. In this kind of pair, nothing much happened. As you can clearly see, we were within a big range right here, bouncing between the two levels. And initially, the price was within the seller's area. Now, the fact that we wanted to look for buying opportunities and we were within a seller's area, we needed one of two things, as you can see John has illustrated here. Either a breach to the upside and a hold above, or a pullback coming back down lower. Fortunately, the price just kept on holding within this area. It attempted to break this area to the upside, but you can clearly see that was just a probe. Now, later on, it ended up doing it, or at least attempting to do it, but you can see every time the price goes to the upside, it comes straight back in. It goes up, it comes straight back in, meaning this price was just, or at least it's still holding, and all these moves to the upsides were just probes. So even though the price is starting to come down today, unfortunately, this is a pair that could potentially end up giving us issues, and that's the reason why it is off our watch list. Now, the next pair we did have was the British pound against the US dollar. Now, in this kind of pair, our bias here was to look for selling opportunities, but it's a similar situation with the British pound against the Canadian dollar. The British pound showed a lot of weakness and just took off at the Frankfurt market open at 10 o'clock. As you can see, we were within this particular bias area. So there was no way that we would be able to look for selling opportunities at that time. So we needed either some sort of pullback coming back in to actually hold below. Unfortunately, the price was really, really strong coming to the downside, and it did end up running away from us. So unfortunately for us, this pair did work out, but unfortunately would have been a bit difficult to get. And today it is off our watch list as well. Now, the next pair we did get was the euro against the US dollar. Now, this kind of pair bias here was to look for selling opportunities. Now, you can see the sells did work out, but unfortunately, this worked out a bit later on. You can clearly see we were still holding within this bias area. The main thing we wanted to see was the price to actually breach the downside and actually hold below. Seems like that's what it's attempting to do now. This is when the pullback is actually coming in. But this could potentially end up giving us some issues due to the fact that both the euro and the US dollar could potentially end up showing us some weakness. And you could find both of these pairs actually just ranging. Unfortunately, this is a pair that we're not going to be looking at. It might fall back onto our watch list because remember, we do have a lot of US dollar fundamentals coming in later. And then we might end up actually seeing potentially if the US dollar goes back to the buy side, then we could potentially end up looking for more selling opportunities on this pair. But unfortunately for now, this is a pair that we're not going to be looking at today. Now, the next pair we did have was the New Zealand dollar against the US dollar. Now, this pair worked out very well, as you can clearly see where the price was initially when John was discussing this market, wanting to see the price coming back up towards the seller's area, which you can see it did. Not necessarily gave a very tiny probe, but the price kept on showing evidence that it was holding below. And you can see the price ended up showing big boys coming in at around 3 o'clock or just before the US market did open. After that, you could have waited for a pullback. It's a similar situation around 3:30 or so, especially once the news events do come out around that time. You can clearly see the market did manage to continue coming to the downside. So unfortunately for us today, since both the New Zealand dollar and the US dollar are both on the same side, this is a pair that we're not going to be looking at today. So before we jump on to today's pairs, let's have a look at a few screenshots that we did manage to get. Then we will be looking at the Japanese yen pairs. So we'll start off here with Alvin. Alvin, you did manage to have a very nice selling opportunity on the euro against the US dollar. Up to you took advantage of that. Very nice sell right there at the top. took your take profit right there at the bottom where the buyers are, and you can clearly see the reaction of the buyer. So most of the time, most people see a big red candle and they're very happy, not necessarily managing their trade. Next thing they realize that the price is back up at the entry. So very, very good job on this trade, Alvin. Keep up the good work that you're doing, as well as you didn't manage to grab the British pound against the US dollar. Seems you took advantage of that and you are able to actually grab that selling opportunity. So very well done. Very nice sell right there. You can see the price really did come down in your favor. You have closed your trade right there. So very, very good job on these trades. Alvin, keep up the good work that you're doing and keep sending in your screenshots. So also next, we get a screenshot from Bob. Bob is one of our one-on-one students. He did manage to grab a very nice selling opportunity here on the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar. Hence the price coming down in his favor. Stop loss already below the entry, below this particular buyer's area. Sorry, seller's area. As you can see, we always point out, follow the story where you can clearly see when the price comes to the downside, these are the next sellers that actually started pushing to the downside. So having your stop loss above there is safe. So you can clearly see even when the price came back up, you put it at that level, you'd have easily been stopped out before the price continued going to the downside. But happy to see you did manage to put your stop loss just above there. So very good job on that trade, Bob. Keep up the good work that you're doing as well. So also next we get Metrine. Metrine, happy to see a screenshot here. You seem to be a very professional on the NASDAQ and the indices. So very good job on this trade. So you managed to grab a buying opportunity on the NASDAQ. Very nice buys right there. Price took off in your favor. We can see your stop losses be above your entry. So very good job on this. I do end up hoping you did manage your trade within this seller's area as well. But I do know that you know how to trade these pairs. So very, very well done on this trade, Metrine. So also next, we do get Stacy. Stacy, happy to see your screenshots here. You did manage to grab also some selling opportunities on the euro against the US dollar. Very nice sell right there at the top. Manage your trade where your stop loss is below your entry. And you can see you have managed to grab another selling opportunity. As you can clearly see the price coming down with your stop loss already below your entry. But I think by this time, once especially you've entered the second trade and your stop loss is already at break even, you can also be able to secure more by moving the higher stop loss at least towards the same area. So just in case the price comes up, at least you have secured a lot more. So very, very good job on this trade, Stacy. You also did manage to grab the New Zealand dollar against Canadian dollar as well. Similar situation to Bob. Very nice sell right there at the top. Price coming down in your favor. Very good placement of your stop loss as well. So very good job on this trade, Stacy. And keep up the good work that you're doing and keep sending them in. So remember, guys, if you do manage to take any setups based on things that we do share, feel free to send them in to us. Our contact details are there in the video description. So let's jump on to today's pairs. So our focus is going to be on our Japanese yen pairs. We'll mix and match them with all the pairs on the sell side. So we'll start off here with the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. Now, this pair is a brand new entry on our watch list. Now, our bias here is going to be looking for selling opportunities. You can clearly see the way the price has been coming to the upside, struggling to make a new high within this particular area. And our focus here is going to be looking for selling opportunities. So these are the areas that we'll be looking at for aggressive selling opportunities right there at the top. We have the semi-conservative area right there, and we have the next bias area down here at the bottom. So right now, as you can clearly see the way the price is reacting, the way to see if we can get some sort of probe or price action signal. We've seen it probe this area multiple times. So if we see the price coming back in and holding below, at that point in time, we could potentially end up looking for a selling opportunity. But remember, watch out for where the buyers are. You can clearly see if you do end up focusing on this area right here. These are the buyers who have been actually pushing to the upside. So as long as you're holding above that area, you should still be looking for, at least not necessarily jumping in on yourselves because you know the buyers are still there. So you can clearly see even though the price came down very aggressive, this buyer's area still held, pushing to the upside. So you could end up waiting for this area to actually be breached if you do want to be a bit more conservative. If the price ends up holding below that area, then you should be able to go down low. Although the objective hopefully would be we are able to make a bit of a new high within this particular area. So if the market actually ends up coming down again, then pushing to the upside, at least we know our new buyers will be there. We will potentially wait. If that area is breached to the downside, then we could potentially end up looking for a selling opportunity. Ideally, just waiting for a breach of structure. But for right now, let's wait to see what ends up happening. The buyers are still running for now. We'll wait to see if we end up getting some big boy sellers actually coming in. So hope the game plan is clear on the Australian dollar against the Japanese yen. As we move on to the next currency pair we do have, which is the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. Brand new entry on our watch list, and our bias here is to look for selling opportunities. Now, we do have three areas that we have identified that the cells could potentially end up working out from. But you can clearly see right now, we're very close within an area where they're buyers. So we do not necessarily want to start jumping in on our selling opportunities just yet. So we need one of two things to end up happening. Either this market is actually going to give us more of a pullback, coming back within this seller's area before we end up seeing some signs of big boy sellers before we're able to look for those selling opportunities there. Or we could end up finding this market actually breaking this buyer's area to the downside. We're able to get the price coming down lower. Remember, we want to see the price holding below for us to look for those selling opportunities. We'll wait to see what ends up happening on the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. That ideally is the game plan. You can see we have been coming to the upside for quite a while, very strong buyers. There has been a pullback, but now look at how the buyers are coming in, much, much weaker. And that's the reason why we're waiting to see when the big boy sellers are actually going to come back in. So hope that's clear. Please, what we're looking at doing on the Swiss franc against the Japanese yen. Remember, the yen pairs are very much correlated. So when you see one of these pairs moving, chances are the other pairs will also start moving. So here, moving on to the British pound against the Japanese yen, most of these pairs, remember, are brand new entrants on our watch list. So in this situation, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. Hopefully, we can take more advantage of that British pound weakness that we did end up seeing yesterday that did manage to come back in. And you can see the way the buyers are coming in struggling, which is definitely a good sign for us. But remember, the main thing we do want to see is potentially the price coming back in within this seller's area, seeing some signs of big boy sellers to come in before we're able to look for those selling opportunities. Or remember, you can be able to follow the story of the buyer. Ideally, these are concepts we do teach within one-on-one mentorship, but you can clearly see the price coming to the upside. These are the buyers. As long as you're following the story of how the buyers are coming to the upside, at that point in time, or at least when they are breached to the downside, you could potentially end up looking for a selling opportunity there. But for right now, the buyers are still the ones running. Let's wait to see at what point in time the big boy sellers do come back in. So hope the game plan is clear based on what we're looking at doing on the British pound against the Japanese yen. Let's move on to the next yen pair we do have. So right here, we have the euro against the Japanese yen. In this situation, our bias here is going to be looking for selling opportunities. So these are the three areas that we're going to be focusing on to look for our potential sells. So right now, the price looks as if it's breaking this area to the downside and potentially holding below. We'll be interested to see what kind of reaction we do end up getting since we are within an area where the sellers. But remember, the way the buyers are coming in is much, much lower, which is a good sign for us. But it's not yet time, just because we're within a seller's area, it's not yet time to look for your selling opportunities just yet. Remember, the price could end up giving a probe right there, inciting a lot of people to start looking for buying opportunities or stopping out any seller that's already in a bit earlier. If we do end up seeing the price coming back in, remember, we always want to see the big boy sellers. So aggressive sellers coming back in. At that point in time, we know that's when the market is actually going to potentially move from that area. But until we do see that, there should be no trading opportunity just yet. For now, let's wait to see what ends up happening. If we are able to get the price actually holding below, the price holds above, where it breaches and holds above, we could end up getting the price coming back all the way to this red support and resistance area. But be aware of areas where the sellers, you can see the market did end up reacting within this area before, at least yesterday. It could potentially react from there again. So be cautious about this pair, and we'll wait to see what ends up happening on the euro against the Japanese yen. So hope the game plan is clear on the euro against the yen as we move on to the next yen pair that we do have. So right here, we have the New Zealand dollar against the Japanese yen. Now in this situation, our bias here is going to be looking for selling opportunities. Let me just zoom in a bit to make it a bit clearer. So our focus is going to be looking for selling opportunities on this kind of pair. You can clearly see the strength of the buyers versus the sellers. So if looking at this particular area, look at the way the buyers did end up reacting, coming to the upside, did end up getting some sort of rejection within here where the price has come back, challenge that same buyer within that area. But if you compare how they came up the first time, was very strong, but now look how they are coming to the upside. Much weaker in comparison to the particular buyers, the way they did end up coming before. That is a sign that the buyers are not necessarily as buying as much, meaning there's potential that the sellers could come back in. So wait to see what ends up happening. We have the main aggressive sellers area right here, so we could potentially look for selling opportunities there. We have the buyers area that we do need to watch out for. So ideally, if we are able to get the price reaching and holding below this buyers area, we should be able to continue looking for selling opportunities. And we have the main, or at least the next buyers area all the way down here at the bottom. So right now, the price is coming back up. The reason reason why you have this blue support and resistance area here is you can see this was definitely a support and resistance area that was breached to the downside. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening here. So you could end up either finding the price going all the way back up to the main sellers before we're able to find some selling opportunities, or you could easily find the price coming back in. If you do end up getting some sort of proof where you see the sellers coming in aggressive, you see the price holding below, you could potentially end up looking for a selling opportunity then. But remember, if you do want to be a bit more conservative, watch out for this particular buyer that is pushing to the upside. Ideally, if you can get that buyer struggling or being breached to the downside and the price holding below, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities there. So in this pair, we wait to see what ends up happening. The bars are still running right now. But remember, if the prices break and hold below the red support and resistance area, remember this being the yens, if they do end up breaking and hold above, chances are all of them will. And if that's the case, then chances are it will not necessarily be a trading day. Because remember, not necessarily every day that you have to actually jump in on trades. Sometimes they're good, or at least the markets look good, and sometimes you might not necessarily get that much, but that's part of trading. So we'll wait to see what ends up happening, or at least what kind of movements we do end up getting on the yen pairs. So the next yen pair we did have, or at least even had yesterday, was the Canadian dollar against the Japanese yen. However, on this currency pair, our bias yesterday was to look for buying opportunities. Now, the areas we did have were pretty similar. As you can see, the highlighted areas, although we have adjusted the top area slightly, because this was the level where the price was. Now, you can clearly see what John's illustration was, wanting to see whether or not the price is actually going to breach and hold above. Now, the price came up strong, and we did end up getting a pullback where the price did manage to attempt to actually continue going to the upside at 3 o'clock. But it would have been a bit tricky to actually grab this opportunity, especially since we did want the price coming down a bit lower, or giving us proper confirmation that it was actually holding above within this area. Although we can clearly see the Canadian dollar and fundamentals did switch, and the yen pairs fundamentals did switch. So today, our bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. Yesterday, it was to look for buys. Today, it is to look for sells based on these three areas. So right here, we have this very aggressive sellers area. You can clearly see how many times this market has been able to actually probe this area. Because you can see this was this particular high right here where the market did end up rejecting. And you can see since then, every time the price goes up, it's just a probe. Even though the price came up looking as if it was holding to the upside, it was just a probe where the price came back in, showing us evidence it's holding below. So that's the reason why these are very strong sellers area. So we'll be looking to see if we can end up getting some sort of probe or price action signal right here. We do end up seeing aggressive sellers and the price falls below, then we should be able to look for selling opportunities. But remember, if the price breaks and falls above this red support and resistance area, then ideally this pair will fall off our watches. So moving on to the next and last currency pair that we do have. So right here, we have the US dollar against the Japanese yen. And yesterday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. You can see the three areas that John had pointed out. Now, the buys did end up working out quite well. You can clearly see the price was very close within a seller's area. We did end up getting the pullback coming in. Similar situation, it's like John was forecasting what exactly was going to happen. You can see the price gave a very nice probe right there, showing us evidence that the buyers are coming in. And remember, the fact that we always keep on pointing out, we always want to see aggressive buyers come in and the sellers struggle. So if we do end up looking at this particular area quickly, you can clearly see the way the buyers shot to the upside. Those are the very strong buyers that we want to see. And you can see the reaction of the sellers was much slower at that point in time. So at that point in time, you could clearly see we did end up breaking this support and resistance area, still holding above that SNR, could have ended up looking for a very nice buying opportunity there. But fortunately for us today, the fundamentals have switched. So unfortunately, we'll not be looking for buying opportunities anymore, but we will be looking for selling opportunities. So our focus is going to be on these three areas. We've adjusted the top level slightly, but these other areas too remain similar. So we'll be focusing on these three areas to potentially look for selling opportunity. Right now, the fact that we're within an area where the buyers, definitely not a place for us to look for sells. So one of two things is going to happen. Either the price is going to come back in within that main seller's area before we're able to look for selling opportunities, or these buyers are not necessarily going to do that much, and we could easily see the price coming to the downside. If we do end up seeing that, we should wait for the price to actually give us a pullback, holding below that area. If we do see that and it lines up within the market opening times, remember, that's 10, 11, 3, and 4:30. So hope the game plan is clear on all the currency pairs. Ideally, since it is only one currency pair that we're focusing on, that's ideally why we'll finish that quite quickly. So before we do end up at least right now, let's have a look at the indices since we're done with the current pairs. So we'll start off with the indices before we do end up moving on to gold and silver. Now, with the indices are a bit tricky at the moment, just basic the fact that we have Trump in the White House, so he is causing a lot of issues and uncertainty in the markets. Yesterday, there were meant to be some certain tariffs that were meant to be placed on automobiles. Unfortunately, that caused a lot of fear with a lot of traders, and they ended up dumping a lot of tech stocks, things like Tesla, mostly automobiles and tech stocks. And that's the reason why this did manage to come down very, very aggressive. Although that being the case, we are still going to be looking for buying opportunities. You can see, especially based on this higher time frame, the price did manage to actually go to the upside. As you can see, it has been on an upwards move. This is a support and resistance area that we've reached. So it's no surprise that the price has come back to that area and we are still holding above. Remember, most of the time that we are there to incite people to look for selling opportunities before the buys do work out. So the reason why, even that's the reason why the market did end up coming down very aggressively yesterday. But you can clearly see this market has not actually breached and held below this support and resistance area. That being the case, remember, we're purely technical on these pairs, meaning as long as we're holding above the red SNR, our bias is going to be looking for buying opportunities. So right now, we did end up getting some sort of growth within that particular area. So let's hope to see if we can end up getting the price giving us a pullback, showing us evidence that it's going to hold above, or some signs of big boy buyers showing up within here. Then at that point in time, we will continue looking for buying opportunities. However, if this price does manage to actually break this area to the downside, and remember, if it does manage to hold, then at that point in time, our bias will switch and we will start looking for selling opportunities. But for right now, we will still be on the buying opportunities right here, based on the fact that we are holding above this red support and resistance area. So do watch out for that. If we do manage to grab a buy, make sure you manage your trade within this first support and resistance area as well. So hope the game plan is clear there as we move on to the next pair that we do have, which is the Dow Jones or the US 30. Now, yesterday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. Now, you can clearly see the price was holding within the seller's area, so no real buying opportunity just yet. Price did manage to break this area to the upside, and we did get a pullback. Unfortunately, the pullback was not as much as we wanted. We wanted to see the price coming down a bit lower, but you can see the timing. That was at exactly 3 o'clock. The US market did end up opening then. You can see that's when the price did manage to start going to the upside. Fortunately, later on, around 5:30 or so, that's when the market, there was a lot of indecision at that point in time. You can clearly see that weakness that did come in. But remember, as long as we're still holding above this particular red support and resistance area, our bias is going to still be looking for buying opportunities. The main reason for that is because this particular high hasn't really been fully breached, especially when you end up going up to a higher time frame, ends up being much clearer. So you can see we're within a major seller's area, but every time the price goes to the upside, not once has it actually held above. You can see right here, there's just a probe here, right here, morning wicks, similar situation right here. And even as the price went up, you can clearly see the way we've come down. We have not actually been able to breach and hold above that particular area. So that's the reason why we will still be looking for buying opportunities and still be focusing on the same areas that we do end up having. Still looking for buys, but the fact that we're within an area where there are sellers, remember, we need either the price to actually break this area to the upside. If we can get the price breaking and holding above, then we should be able to look for buying opportunities there. Remember, if the price does not end up reacting within that area and the sellers do end up coming down, since we are within an area where the sellers, there's potential that maybe this area where the price managed to come back to an attempt to go to the upside was probably not enough in terms of a good enough price for the buyers. And you could potentially find the market actually coming to the downside at that point in time, inciting a few more people to look for sells. And that's when you could potentially find the buyers coming in that particular area. So wait to see what ends up happening here on the Dow Jones. So hope the game plan is clear there. So moving on to the next pair that we do have, which is silver. Now, in silver, yesterday, our bias here was to look for buying opportunities. It is still the same situation today. Now, you can clearly see the areas that John had pointed out, potentially look for buying opportunities, but it seems that the market just ended up ranging between this particular level. Found some small buyers area there, and it seemed to have been holding the whole day. You can clearly see we attempted to break this area to the upside. Unfortunately, we could not do that since the price never held above. It was just a probe right there. But the fact that this buyer's area is still holding, we are within this small range. But what it could potentially mean is that this particular blue area right here, the blue support and resistance area that we do have, the fact that we've not been able to make a new high, we might need a more of a discount. So at least the buyers might need more of a discount in this situation. So at that point in time, you could find the price actually coming down a bit lower, inciting more people to now jump in on the sales. And we do see the buyers showing interest. And at that point in time, we could potentially find a very nice buying opportunity for us in silver. But remember, the other alternative is if the price manages to actually go and hold to the upside, then we should be able to continue looking for buying opportunities here on silver. So hope the game plan is clear on what we're looking at doing on silver as we move on to the next pair that we do have, which is gold. Now on gold, yesterday our bias was to look for selling opportunities. It is still the same situation today. Fortunately, the sell did not necessarily work out as well for us. You can clearly see this market seemed to just be bouncing off these particular two levels right here. There's the market is ranging. Similar situation with silver, but gold ideally does look a lot messier, but the stories usually are the same since the markets were ranging. And now we didn't manage to actually get the pullback coming in towards the main sellers area. Possibly meant that this price right here was not good enough for the sellers. So, but now they managed to actually get the price coming back in within the main area. We could potentially see the market continue to come to the downside. So today, bias is going to be looking for selling opportunities. We can't see the type of reaction that we've gotten there. But just because we've seen that kind of reaction, do not start jumping in on your selling opportunities. Remember, you do need to be careful about where you're placing your trades. Right now, if you jump in on a sell, you're so close within this buyer's area, it's not a wise choice. So possibly wait for some sort of pullback to come in where we could end up seeing the buyers struggling because the fact that the buyers push to the upside, though these buyers do not just necessarily disappear. You could easily see the buyers coming in, but what we want to see them coming in struggling, we might not necessarily get all the way to the top, but once we do see some aggressive sellers coming in, then we should be able to find some selling opportunities there. Alternatively, you could find this price continuing to come to the downside. The safest place to end up actually looking for your sell is once this area is breached to the downside where these buyers are. So once the price is able to go to the downside, remember, if you can get the price holding below, and we should be able to look for selling opportunities there. But be aware, even though we have these major levels, the fact that the price has reacted from here multiple times, do make sure you do manage your trade as well within this particular buyer's area. So hope the game plan is clear. And remember, with gold, as long as we're holding below the red SMR, we are going to be looking for selling opportunities. If the price breaks and falls above this red support resistance area, at that point in time, our bias will switch and we will start looking for buying opportunities. So hope that is clear on all the time pairs. As you can see, we'll mix and match the yen pair, ideally with the pairs on the sell side, as well as looking at the indices. So let me see if there are any questions on the chat box. Not seeing any, which is okay. Do end up having a lot more time to be able to figure out what is going to happen today. London market might be a bit slow just based on the fact that there are no fundamentals. However, that doesn't mean, or that's not a guarantee. Sometimes you'll find that the London big boys will be using the news events that happened yesterday during the US session, because that's the first time that they've gotten that information, and you could potentially see them reacting then. So for now, our focus will be this, and this will be our watch list for today. So I guess that's it from me and from us. I hope you guys have found value in this session. The week has been quite good with the US dollar and the Canadian dollar pairs. Let's hope the yen pairs do end up showing up, but we will end up informing you on the Telegram channel. If there are any changes to the watch list, we will make sure you are notified there. Once again, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Hope you have an amazing trading day. God bless, happy trading, and bye for now. Cheers, guys.